topic then, we'll go over very quickly. We'll talk about unconventional RPG systems. When it comes to the RPG genre, we have certainly seen developers pull from the same well, or draw from the same well in terms of combat systems. Again, following the release of Final Fantasy and Dragon Warrior back in the old days, that kind of became the foundation for many RPG systems. But over the years, there have been games that have tried to experiment and get away from the standard we go, you go kind of system. Games like The World Ends With You, even that was a really good one, but then we saw games that try to add in unique rule sets, such as allowing the player to manipulate the turn order. What was the name of that game? Does anyone remember? There's a... was it Grandia? Is that the one that allows you to adjust your turn or control the turn order of the game? Let me see. Could be Grandia was one of them. Or even something like Suikoden that allows you to build your party from a huge cast. And then of course we have the Shin Megami and Pokemon style, where you throw in the different resistances, or in SMT's case, the press turn system. But the point is, there are RPGs that have some very unique takes. Oh yeah, shot management, I forget which game did that. Oh, Racketeer as well, that would be another good one. I don't know, that may be pushing it for this topic though, because that's almost like it's the shop simulator genre, which could be that it has its own unique design. But we've seen RPGs that try to do either unique twists or even just have unique takes. For instance, Earthbound has the famous ticking down health system, that instead of just taking damage automatically, it ticks down. So what could happen is, let's say the enemy does 1,000 points of damage to me. Instead of taking all that damage immediately, you'll see my health start going down. It'll go, 599, 598, 597, and so on. If you can heal that character or finish the battle before your health hits 0, then all the rest of that damage is negated. And that was a very weird case there. But the thing about, and another really good example of weird or unconventional RPG systems, we can talk about the entire Disgaea franchise. Disgaea? I forget what's the exact pronunciation. But Disgaea is just layers upon layers of systems. You can upgrade your characters, you can upgrade your weapons, you can go into the item world. Later games introduce a voting system that allows you to vote for buffs or for changes. You have the different character classes. You have masteries of the various weapons. You have characters learn spells by being next to other characters. And the rabbit hole just keeps getting deeper and deeper in that game. And it's why you can spend like 100 hours minimum just playing an SRPG like that from Nice America. Oh, and actually, here's a game, and this is a challenge for anyone watching this live or recorded. Did you ever play Nights in the Nightmare by Atlas? And I'm actually going to take a sip of water while I wait for chat to see if anyone else has played that game. Alright. Nights in the Nightmare is up there along with The World Ends With You as being an insane RPG. I'm going to see if I can describe this for you. So, the basic gameplay is when you start a mission, you have a bingo board at the bottom of the screen. And each tile, each square in the bingo board represents a battle. To beat the mission, you need to basically, not bingo, it's maybe a tic-tac-toe. You have to get a line in any direction. So when you do a battle, what happens is you have your different characters go on the field, and each character class basically moves in a different way. It's kind of like chess. So a knight can move either straight or diagonal, while an archer will only attack diagonally. And then what happens is you need to destroy parts on the field in order to reveal new spirits that you can then bring into the play later on. But then all the while you're moving around, the enemies attack bullet hell style. So you have this like little wisp that you're controlling on the screen that commands units, and all of a sudden the enemies will just spit out 10,000 bullets on screen that you have to dodge to try and complete your battle. And the entire game is insane. Like this, it's just weird system on top of weird system. Another unconventional, or two very unconventional RPGs that I really loved was Valkyrie Profile and Shadow Hearts. Did anyone play either of those two? Shadow Hearts had almost a tactical system where you move characters around, or I'm sorry, I'm thinking of a different game. What happened was you control your character's attack by choosing them to either attack either straight, low, or high. And you set up combos by, let's say you hit the guy with a mid attack that hits him up in the air, you follow with a low attack that will push them back down, and you do bonus damage. And the crazy part about the Shadow Hearts franchise is that literally every character has a different progression curve in terms of how they become more powerful. The female character in the second game, she learned new moves by you finding new operas that she reads and then she listens to, or she reads the notes and then she plays it, and then she becomes inspired to get a new attack. You have another character, and you're going to love this one. It's a wolf, and the wolf is the pet of the main character of Shadow Hearts 2, and he grows more powerful, or I think it was a she, whatever. They become more powerful by engaging in, I'm not kidding on this one, dog fight club around the world. What happens is as you explore various towns, you find other dogs, and then your dog gets into a fight. It's an RPG battle with another dog, and when you win, you grow in ranking that gives the character new moves. And then another character in that game became more powerful. Oh, you're gonna love this one. He was a vampire who also masquerades as a superhero. And every few minutes he switches between his different forms. And he grows more powerful by sensing the good in objects that aren't alive, that he then wields as weapons. So he starts out with like a wooden plank. He then finds a frozen fish. He then finds a phone booth that he just picks up and he just starts smacking people with. And then the final thing he gets is, I don't even remember, but he gets like a crazy item that's his ultimate weapon. And all this is wrapped up in this RPG combat system. But getting back to the topic, these are games that feature very unconventional systems that become either the basis for the combat or become an additional layer of progression or growth in the game. And this is when things get very weird in terms of design, because many of these games are one-offs, or the series are one-offs. So you don't really have another game to compare it to. Again, something like The World Ends With You or Nights in a Nightmare, there are no other games that you can look at as a comparison. And this becomes very interesting in terms of design and balance, because when you don't have another game to look at or compare to, you're pretty much flying blind in terms of how you're building your game, and especially how players will take to it. I may have loved The World Ends With You, but it was a dud in terms of sales. And it raises a very interesting point. When you do these systems, how do you balance them without being just weird for the sake of being weird? For instance, something like Dissecting, even though it has so many game systems, it's looked at favorably because they're all tied into that core gameplay loop of building your party up to the obscene level 9999 level and then doing 1,000,000 points of damage. But when it gets too much, I think, is when it just feels more like a distraction from the main game. For instance, in Bravely Default and Bravely Default 2, there's a whole subsystem of you building a town, and you assign villagers to repair or upgrade various buildings in that town, and this determines gear unlocks in the main game. The problem is that there is no real control by the player, so it just feels like busy work, or you're literally waiting to unlock the stuff you need to keep going. And that you need to be careful of. Yeah. When it just feels like a gimmick that hides the main game. You mentioned a few minutes ago, Goro, Racketeer with the shop simulator. And that is a good example of a system that works, because both systems are tied together. As I get more money, it lets me buy more stuff so I can take into the combat. The combat gets me more gear or stuff to sell that goes back to the shop. When you have that multi-system design, the gameplay loops going around like that, it works when everything's engaging like that. Why do you think air combat games are not popular? That is a good topic. Man, I think I would like to talk about that with Rob. Maybe we'll save that for when he comes back, or maybe we'll talk about that one next week. Because we are approaching an hour and 15 in, and my voice is starting to go here. I also need to go grab something to eat. That food game got me very hungry. But to begin to wrap things up for this section, when it comes to unconventional games, it basically comes down to how everything is integrated into each other. For instance, you could have an RPG that has a full visual novel style dating sim attached to it, but if it just feels like it's tacked on, ooh, that gives me a good example. If you remember from Killer is Dead, and that is the exact name, when we played that a few weeks ago, there is what's called the Juggalo mode, that you have to date and score with various women around the world, and the whole point of the system is that you're staring at... Oh, God. I'm afraid to even ask that one. But the whole point is you have to stare at the women's breasts and other attractive parts of the woman in order to build up your lust meter. And when it fills up enough, you then give her a gift, and then she decides to sleep with you. And I know what you're thinking right now. Why would I want to do a system like that, especially in a game that's about running around hacking and slashing various enemies to the weird story of Suda51? But here's the thing, though. It's the only way to unlock new weapons in Killer is Dead. And again, it just feels superfluous to the main content of the game. And that's what you have to be careful about. If it's just its own separate system that is not attached to anything else, but you still have to do it, then it starts to feel more like a gimmick. Damn. Well, I thought most visual novel games, your main character can die in hundreds of various ways. But we have played RPGs like that, where it just feels like these systems are tacked on to create busy work. Such as you have to stop your entire game and then craft your new gear. But the crafting just takes extra time, and there's no real decision to it. There's this big series that Nice has published. Let me see if I can grab it for a second. Man, I can't... Here it is. Oh, that's good. The series is Atelier Iris. And let me see. And the whole series, it's an RPG, it's a JRPG that has an alchemy subgame to it, or minigame, or side quest. I'm mixing up my terms here because I'm getting tired. Where you go around the world learning new recipes and finding materials that you then will alchemize to create new items that you then use in combat, or new gear. And that was looked at pretty... Again, I think the series is popular, or at least has a niche following, by the fact that what you're doing in one system is impacting the other one. As I explore, I get new items and materials and recipes, that I then will use in the alchemy, that I then will use in the combat. As long as things are being tied together, there's a thread between your systems, and it doesn't just feel like busy work, it will be a lot more engaging to the player. Let me see if I can look this up anymore. How many games are there in this franchise? I think I'm afraid to ask here. Crispin Freeman voice one. Is that guy who I'm thinking of? Let me see. Oh my god. There's 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18. Wow, there's 19 main games in this franchise. With the last one, oh my god. And they have different, oh my goodness. The Atelier part is the same, and then there's Atelier Judy, Atelier Leary, Monokema. Whew. You gotta love Japanese series with their different naming conventions. Another thing that we've seen, and as this will be our final point, and this is a very popular thing that Japanese developers do. Oh, you think that's bad? Shin Megami Tensei has the side stories as well. But one of the things that a lot of Japanese developers do is that they will have unique side content or sides or subsystems in their side stories. This is what's famous about Shin Megami Tensei. You have Shin Megami Tensei, which is the main branch. That's the hardcore Pokemon style combat. You then have Persona, which is the side story of that, and that has more of the social links and more of the high school stories to it. You then have, hold on, I need to get this. You think those titles are crazy? You're gonna love this one. There's a game called Shin Megami Tensei Devil Summoner Raido Kuzunoa versus the Soulless Army. That is a RPG with real-time combat and random encounters. There's also Devil Survivor, which is its own thing. And then there is the Shin Megami Tensei Strange Journey. Oh crap, I just realized I got a press key to play that for the 3DS version. I haven't gotten around to playing it yet. And which is built on the Etrian Odyssey model, which there's also there's a Persona Q, which is another side story of that. So what they do is essentially, they use these side stories as almost a test bed for the various unconventional systems. So if it works, then they have a new side story. Shin Megami Tensei. Oh crap! I can't remember which one it was. Shin Megami Tensei. Oh, now I remember. Digital Devil Saga had a RPG skill tree that you assign your character's various spells and upgrades to on top of the press turn system, and was popular enough to get a sequel. But again, what they do is that if the side story doesn't work, so I'm just sitting outside my window, if it doesn't work, then they just, cut it and we go back to the main story. If it does work, then they have a quote-unquote another franchise to build their brand around. And that's why the Shin Megami Tensei series has all these different branching stories. Final Fantasy, I don't think really does that all that well. They just do side stories, but they don't really do anything with too many new subsystems, do they? The only thing that comes to my mind was that costume system of Final Fantasy X-2. Oh, that's another great... You gotta love the Final Fantasy naming conventions when they do X2, X3, Lightning Returns, and stuff like that. But the main point, again, this is where we'll wrap things up for this week, is that when you have these different subsystems, they always, or unconventional systems, they must always be tied into your main game, or your main gameplay loop. And one final game, and I've talked about this one, I will talk about until the end of time. Resonance of Fate for, I think it was PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3. Let me see this. I love that Google automatically knows I'm trying to type in crazy JRPG titles. PlayStation 3. That is one of the most crazy over-the-top RPGs out there. If you haven't played it yet, you gotta see this one. It's an RPG where you use what's the name of that? John Woo style gunplay to fight enemies. And part of your strategy during a turn is to run at an enemy, shoot them so they go flying up into the air, jump over the enemy, shooting them while you're in the air, slamming them back into the ground to do bonus damage. And that's during a turn in this game. Just an absolute crazy game that we never saw a sequel to because I think it was just too weird. It also had this whole system of you having to power up the game map in order to go to various nodes to unlock upgrades. And again, when you have these crazy systems, if you're not careful, if it's too out of the box or it's too distracting from the main game, your players will just try and ignore it. And what's worse, exactly, what's worse is if you have these weird systems and they are crucial to playing the main game, such as you tying upgrades or power-ups to your main game, such as the Killer's Dead Juggalo mode. And if the player doesn't want to do something, you're forcing them to do it, that's when things go too far. But we're going to wrap things up here because my voice is dying, and I'm pretty sure it's about to pour again here. So, thank you so much for watching this week's Game Wisdom Live. For the folks who are watching this live right now, we'll be back tonight for Hammer Watch, and next week I'm afraid it will just be me again, ranting and rambling about game design for an hour. But then after that, Rob will be back for the Sunday after that. If you'd like to watch this uncut and ad-free, be sure to check out our Patreon, patreon.com/GWBycer. VIP donations will get all of our talks like that. But I need to go grab something to eat. I will see you guys tonight for that Hammer Watch play. We'll see how things go. And check back for daily discussions on game design here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games.